afternoon. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to discuss goals and outcomes. If you don't know what a goal or an outcome is, don't fret, you're still in the right place. We will discuss exactly what a goal and an outcome is when we're talking about EMS education. First up, let's talk about learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are statements that describe essential learning that students have achieved and that they can reliably demonstrate at the end of the course. And the key word here is reliable. They can't just demonstrate it once and never again, but reliably and consistently. Next up, we have instructional goals. These describe activities that a student will learn or that they'll be able to perform after instruction. This also indicates the context in which the behavior will be performed. Now let's take a look at an example of the difference between learning outcomes and instructional goals. Let's start with an example of a learning outcome. Here we have the EMS student. The EMS student will successfully perform the application of a tourniquet, given the correct scenario where the application of the tourniquet is indicated. Now let's look at an example of an instructional goal. Here we have the EMS student. The EMS student will learn about the use of a tourniquet. This includes the indications and contraindications for the use of the tourniquet. Now you might be thinking, what's the benefit? How does this help a student think critically? Well, let's talk about that. Now, short and sweet, it helps get them to their effective domain. Now, why does this matter? Well, effective outcomes are more closely related to deeper thinking. Of course, now you're wondering, what is the effective domain? Well, it is learning in terms of emotions, values, attitudes, feelings, and all the above. Essentially, it's caring about what you're learning about. Why does feelings and attitudes and emotions matter in learning? I'm not big into math. I can't remember when I learned how to multiply, when I learned long division, when I learned chemistry equations. I love medicine. I can absolutely tell you the first time I learned how to sling and swath. I'm not talking CPR or cardio version, simple sling and swath. I still remember it because I cared about that. I didn't care much about math. Now, how do we as educators help our students get to these goals? How do we meet these learning outcomes? There are plenty of ways to do this, and as an educator, you'll find what works best for you and your teaching style. I'll give you an example of what works for me. First off, I find it very important to understand the instructional level that I'm teaching at. One example of this is you learn to crawl before you learn to walk, before you learn to run. Now, translating this into EMS, I'm going to learn terminology about EKGs. Then, I'm going to look into the basics of an EKG, a normal EKG. Finally, I'm going to be able to read EKGs. I'm going to be able to tell you if this is a STEMI, if this is ventricular fibrillation. I've got to know the terminology before I can know what the EKG means, before I can truly evaluate. Next, I need to figure out what parts of the lessons are most worthy of the time. I really need to let the students know the important parts, and I need to spend the most time on the parts that they truly, truly need to know. Finally, I believe in student-centered teaching. What this means is I don't want to sit here and talk and talk and talk until they are not listening anymore. I'm going to talk and I'm going to give them information, but I'm going to show them videos. I'm going to show them rhymes, mnemonics. I want them to have real world as much as I can in my classroom. Simulations, role-playing, hands-on. I want them to truly understand and critically think about the scenario. What could go wrong? If I don't do this, will this happen? If I do this, will this happen? I want them to really, truly be as real world as possible. Thank you so much for tuning in as we talked about goals and outcomes. I hope you truly learned something from this video, and I'll catch you next time.